Dress comes in March.
Personally, I suppose, but she can be hit or miss, right?
Recording in progress.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Qathet Regional District Committee of the Whole meeting for July the 8th, 2026. I would like to acknowledge that the meeting is taking place on the traditional and ancestral territory of Tla'amin Nation. Directors, you have your agenda in front of you. Is there any changes to the agenda that I'm not aware of? Seeing not, a motion to accept the agenda. Director Southcott, Director Gisborne, any discussion? All in favor? Approved. Anonymous. Oh, unanimous.
Anonymously.
Anonymously approved. Okay. Adoption of the minutes of June 24th. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing not, a motion to adopt the minutes, please. Director Gisborne, Director Southcott, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. We have two delegations with us, and I'd like to welcome you and just say you'll come up in turn, and you each have 10 minutes in total for your presentation. And we look forward to hearing from you. First is Bert Finnamore, who is no stranger to this table. And have you brought anyone with you, Bert?
Me.
Come on up.
Well, thank you for being to see me again. Directors. 2 years ago, the Qathet Museum and Archives Society put together a committee to look at the redevelopment of a new museum. And we wanted to do that in partnership with the Tla'amin Nation, the City of Powell River, and the Qathet Regional District. In other words, all three levels of government were hoping to be, we were hoping to get them involved right from the beginning. We presented this in late 2024 to the Tla'amin Executive Council. They enthusiastically received this project and asked us to look at other possible partnerships with the local levels of government to see what we could do with it. They so enthusiastic they appointed legislator Tanner Timothy to the we then approached the City of Powell River and that regional district and asked them if they'd be interested in appointing a member to the committee. And we did so with the appointment of Director Gisborne, and who's sitting right here. and
sorry, I have to do everything through the chair.
And Councillor George Dout from town, from the city. The objective of this project is to replace the current Qathet Museum and Archives with a new cultural center that can preserve, store, and display historical and archival materials from the Qathet region. The vision is to create an inspiring cultural center to transform how we understand the past, reflect on the future, and reimagine the future, reflect on the present and reimagine the future together. Now, why do we need a museum, a new museum? Well, right now we're housed in 3 inadequate and aging facilities, all of which are nearing the end of the life cycle. I think the oldest one is the beach hut on Wolyniec Beach, which has no heat, as you know, probably know, and a number of other things. It's also built in 1949. And so it's getting quite old and out of date. And similar, the other buildings are also extremely old. Repair and upkeep are being increasingly downloaded to the museum, something which we cannot afford. The museum lacks access for disabled people. In 2026, that's unbelievable. The exhibits, particularly the Tla'amin exhibit, do not tell the whole story of the region, and that's a really big one. There's no temporary exhibit space or flex space. There's very little public program space, even though we have quite an active public programs. It's limited to certain times of year because of weather. Storage for artifacts, in spite of new shelving, is at capacity. And the museum store, which could be a significant revenue generator, is less than 100 square feet. That's 10 by 10. And it could be doing a lot better if we had more space. Now, the role of a museum in the community is to provide a quiet, constant reminder of the history of a community. We're not shouting at anybody. We're here. We're constantly here. We have a story to tell. It's based on artifacts. It's based on our history, and it's there for all to see, including a substantial number of tourists that come through the community. We have an opportunity here with this partnership to present an exhibit that more fully encompasses the Tla'amin culture and puts it in the, and have it written in part by Tla'amin writers. That's something no one does, or very few people do. And we can look at a view of our history within the context of the Tla'amin culture. A museum exhibit that presents our cultural history interwoven with the far longer Tla'amin cultural history would act as a permanent record for the region and be accessible to everyone at pretty much any time. School children in particular are going to see a presentation like this at least 12 times during their school years. They're going to grow up with a very different concept of what the cultures in this region are, and they're going to be more familiar with them because of a more holistic approach to an exhibit like this. So we have an opportunity, and that opportunity is the federal and provincial granting systems. Unfortunately, they require matching funding. And that's kind of the reason I'm here today. I'm not here for funding. I'm here to look at things that can be used in kind to get matching funding for a grant. And so we're proposing that existing museum space, which is currently in 3 facilities, 9,800 square feet, be doubled and to about 20,000 square feet in a single facility. Solves a lot of problems. We'll develop proposals to Heritage Canada, Island Coastal Economic Trust, as well as private industry and other granting agencies. But often these agencies require 50% matching, essentially. And what we're going to do is propose to use land value as matching in-kind funding for this proposal. So it's a bit of a right to do this, but we're willing to take the time and the expertise and put it together. We've got land that we're already on. We've got other possible land available, and that's the reason I'm here today. And because we have to come up with that 50% matching funding. So originally, I was going to ask that the qathet executive get together with Tla'amin executives and the City of Powell River executive to come up with a parcel of land that could be used for a new museum and that we could use for matching funding. And I presented this last week to Powell River City Council, and they came up with the idea and suggestion that we already have representatives from each of these levels of government on this committee. Why don't we just get together and decide which piece of available land we might like and bring it forward as a delegation and see what happens with it. So that's where I am today. And that's just about all I have to say. And if there are any questions, I'd be pleased to attempt to answer them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Finnamore. I'm sure there will be questions, and I'm going to look around the table for raised hands. And yeah, I'm not seeing any. Okay, Director Southcott and Director Fall. Go ahead.
Thank you, and thanks, Bert, for coming. I'm pretty interested in heritage, and to me, a museum represents a big opportunity to feature that in a not just an educational way, but it's personal. Why I wear this thing right here is because it represents heritage to me, but it represents 2 generations ago, and that was one of my grandparents who came from Ireland. I'm also proud of the heritage that I have of my name, which is emblazoned on a stone wall in a little village. It's not even a village, it's a crossroads in southern England, Devonshire, Cornwall area. My question to you is, when I have gone through the museum and also the Forestry Museum, which I do remember as a kid, they really are old and cramped and don't give an expansive enough opportunity, in my view, for really representing both sides of heritage. It needs to be expanded both ways. This is my feeling. Has there been thinking in your creative group of expanding the sense of heritage of those of us who whose ancestors all came here in the past few generations, to include all that heritage. Has there been thinking of that? Because I really feel I'm hugely have an admiration for Tla'amin Nation and many other First Nations, particularly in British Columbia, who have exploded their pride in heritage. And I see a real gap in my own, the population that I'm a part of, in terms of grasping that to found or provide foundation for identity that then leads us to be able to work together in true strong partnership. Has there been thought about that in your group?
Yes, there has. While this presentation emphasized the Tla'amin culture because it's the most glaring gap that we currently have in the museum, we also talked about the other founding cultures within the community and how we dedicate space to them and what kind of story we tell. One of the first things we would have to do is consult with an architect, of course. But before you can consult with an architect, you kind of have to know how big you want the presentation to be, what topics you want to cover, what depth and how you do it. And that dictates what the architecture ends up being. So yes, we have discussed this to some extent. It hasn't been put on paper yet. That would be the first step should we get funding. What kind of exhibits do we want to have? Yeah, so short answer.
Your land, like, can you start doing this with a commitment or a commitment of land?
We can
put enough.
It may or may not be. It depends what kind of funding we can go for based on the land.
Okay.
We have to keep the figure in mind that we want to get to, which is 20,000 square feet, and with that we could tell a really significant story. Can't tell everything. No, that's what it is. But we can certainly make a really good stab at it with 20,000 square feet. And I think that Tla'amin would be happy and we would be happy. We're not trying to ignore one culture over the other. We're trying to put it in the perspective that it needs to be put into.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Director Southcott. Director Fall, and then followed by Director Elliott.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for presenting to us. This is a big project, and I note that you emphasized the need for in-kind contribution. If I heard your words correctly, that's really what you're looking for from the local governments. And so I guess my question to you, and I'll give an example, is would it be possible as this unfolds to provide a bit more details on the parameters and limits of what might constitute in-kind contributions? Because of course, they have to be accepted by funding agencies, but I think there may be some ways, we might be able to consider certain things as in-kind. And I'll give you one example, and I don't know if you're aware of this, of the qathet Layered History project being headed on Lasqueti Island by Dr. Dana Lepofsky, who's a professor at Simon Fraser University. Her group received some grant funding from the QRD and other funding sources and is developing this. So that might be a opportunity to reach out with some of the initiatives you're looking at, but I'm also wondering, just really, is there a way to connect some of these things like that project and work it into a package that might be considered as in-kind? And I don't know really the limits, but the more we understand the limits of in-kind, the more we'll be able to consider what we might be able to contribute or beef up or adjust as we make decisions going forward.
Thank you for that. That's an excellent suggestion. I am familiar. I've met Dr. Lepofsky, and I am familiar with her work. And the answer again is yes, that's certainly something that could be brought into a project like this. She has done work here in the past, and that could also become an in-kind contribution. And things like that all work into this. The big piece of it is the land, because it's the big chunk of money.
Okay,
thank you.
Director Elliott is next, and followed by Director Gisborne, followed by me.
Thank you, Chair. I first wanted to apologize for my slight tardiness. I was a tiny bit late, and I apologize for that to the entire room and my colleague. So I'm excited to see the shift in how we're moving forward between the presentation at City Council and the presentation here. I really support the group that's already working together to get a little more specific in recommendations coming forward, because if the if you've got an exact location to respond to or some choices, that is easier for council than creating a whole new process. And so, you know, kudos to that, and I support the new shift in how you're approaching this. So I think that there are lands available that the city owns, perhaps the regional district. I don't actually have a catalog of that. I don't know where we're at with that, and common. And so the options are kind of varied, and the three parties trying to put recommendations forward to those governments should have an idea of which ones would work for them and allow us to respond to that rather than this wide open, you tell us kind of a deal, because that can take a really long time. And so I just wanted to say I really appreciate the shift in how you're trying to go about this, using an already existing group that has all the players and coming up with recommendations for the various local governments to be able to just move forward on, I think is a way better process. My question, I guess, is for clarification here is the idea of preservation of heritage that's locally focused here is what a local museum is for. And so some of what is required when we're gaining support for recommendations when they come forward is a really good picture of the vision for how that looks in the future. Yes. And I know that what we put on display or what we're gathering is kind of a separate question from the physical side of the location and the building, but it's not when it comes to getting support for physical. And so I'm wondering if when you're putting your package together, if you could reach out to other educational institutions such as VIU, the schools, and figure out whether there's partnerships available that can be part of your presentation package when you're moving forward with a vision of what this locally focused heritage preservation museum is going to do for us. That's my question.
Another excellent idea, and thank you, Councillor Elliott. Thank you for that. We will certainly look to do that. And, we've always had a public program that is available to the schools, and it's very well subscribed, and certainly we'll bring that into a package to present to councils at the appropriate time. But thank you for that.
Okay, thanks, Director Elliott. Director Gisborne and myself.
Thank you. I have two questions. The first one is about location. They always say location, location, location. Regional district, we don't have a lot of land inside the city of Powder River, and I presume you're not looking to build something up at Haywire Bay. So I guess the question is, like, your location of the primary focus, is that kind of within the municipality somewhere that's kind of close to the population center, or are you open to, you know, Paradise Exhibition Park or Sultry Bay or something? Like, where's the primary hope?
Well, for any museum, the primary hope is to bookend one end or the other of town. Those are the prime locations anywhere in the world. So in our minds, the ends of town are the ferry terminal and town site. So bookend one end or the other, or right where we are. We're also in an excellent location as it is, and that's one of the possibilities. So that's my thinking. But, you know, I don't have 5 million in my back pocket, and so we have to look at what land is available, and we can't choose. There's too much in that area, but we have the opportunity, as the city council has said, to look at what land is available and pick something, and then come back to the councils with the reasons why and what we can do with it.
So we might be able to find something with our regional district working with the city. Because I do believe we own land up by the cemetery, and there's a lot of history there, but that's probably not the kind of history that we're looking at.
But it's been done.
And then my other question is coming to tax requisition, which I know is the burning question for everyone, is, you know, you talk about increasing the floor space, but I did hear some comments about the gift shop, and I guess my question is the tax implications and the recovery for, you know, how, like, if the building goes twice in size, does that mean double taxation, or is there other options that you're looking at as in a way to actually reduce the financial burden on the community, because that's of course a big question that the public will always come up with.
Yeah, there's two ways two big ways to reduce the financial burden on the community. One is we plan no increase in staff. And the other one is a revenue generator in a new museum would go a long way to providing income that could reduce the tax burden. The current gift shop is about 100 square feet, as I said. It brings about 8,000 a year in. Well, what if we could move that 8,000 up to 100,000 a year? And we can do that by catering to the tourist community, which would come through town, which would mean the museum would have to be a destination. And once it's a destination, your visitation goes way up. If you get your visitation way up, your sales go way up. So it's a really simple, straightforward calculation there. It works in every museum. The gift shop can become a major revenue generator. If we could generate $100,000 a year in profit, I'm not talking about revenue, I'm talking about profit here, which I think is totally doable, even in a small museum. Then the tax burden can be alleviated. That's my thinking. And that's just one, that's the most obvious aspect of how you could reduce it. The other thing is, once you've got a museum of some note, you then get into sponsorship opportunities within that museum. And that can be done, has been done in other communities. So I think between not increasing staff size, increasing the gift shop size, and looking at sponsorship opportunities, we can go a long way to helping the tax burden. I would like to see the museum become totally independent. That's my goal. Okay. I don't want to have to come to you guys for funding. That's what I'd like to see. And I'm sure you'd like to see that too.
Speaking my language.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Those are my two questions.
Okay, thanks. I'm next, followed by Director Lennox, and my question is quite quick. What do you envision the in-kind contribution from the regional district to be? Like, what is it that we have that you want?
Well, first of all, you're a major funder of the museum, and just because of that, I think you should be in this equation. It may well be that the best land is outside the community. There's no rule that says it has to be in the community. There are guidelines that where the best places are, which is bookending one or the end of the other of the downtown areas. But that's not cut and dry. I mean, the Tla'amin may come up with an opportunity on Tla'amin Nation that they're willing to put up for a museum.
If that would occur, then what would the contribution be from the regional district?
You're one of our main funders, and it doesn't, I don't need a contribution from each.
Yeah, but the in-kind, yeah, so.
Yeah, no, the in-kind is a project contribution. It doesn't necessarily come from all three. It comes from all three together, not necessarily any one.
Okay. I get that. Thank you. Director Lennox.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Kind of along the same lines, appreciate the vision, right? And looking at what you put before us. So two things from your ask, I think that's what the director is saying. What's the ask? It's clearly that we work with these other levels of government about these three main ideas that you have, because you are targeting Wellington Park, right? Where the current facilities are, Wellington Beach, or inner near town site. So that's clear to me. That's where the current kind of idea is. And for us as the QRD, not having land, it's more, I think, along the lines of a lot of these projects that involve all the different levels and organizations require local government to signal that it's important to us. And even if we can't pony up a whole bunch of money, that we are actually operationally, by the way. So that even supports that more, that if we were to endorse this idea, it does matter to other levels of government, to grant funders, etc. And I was going to ask questions around that vision, and it can't possibly be there yet with Tla'amin, because as we know, even what we call Wellington Beach, there's a whole bunch of history there that I think if we all did this well together, could be super cool. And like to the points that you made, would be a destination. Right. So I get the vision, but I think first of all, the ask is, do we support one of these three sites in whatever manner? And then we stay tuned to see what's next. So unless I hear anything different. Well, there's a question in there somewhere. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. CAO as a.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I've got two questions. First one is, Are the Museum Development Committee and project that representatives have been appointed to, are they one and the same?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so then our director, Director Gisborne, is a member of the Museum Development Committee. And the project is the museum expansion.
Yes.
Okay, now my second question is this. If I heard you correctly earlier, you reclassified your ask to a call to action. Could you please explain in detail what that call to action really is, or what it means?
That call to action is for the 3 levels of government to work together on this project at this point. To look at what land is available from the city, from the regional district, from Tlawa Nation, and come up with something that we can all agree on.
Follow up to that, Chair. So what do you infer by the 3 levels of government when you've already got representatives from all 3 levels of government at your committee level?
This has been pointed out to me in the last city meeting, and that's it's perhaps my confusion a bit, but this committee will choose a piece of land and bring it forward to the committees, to the councils at each level of government, and say this is the choice that we'd like to make.
Sure. So then, if I may paraphrase, then what you're asking is our director to meet with the other elected officials and the committee within that committee function to select those lands and then come back to their representative governments and let those folks at each separate table make the decision on what is, I guess, feeling good.
Or I could come back as a delegation and do the same.
With the information. Okay, cool. I got it now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Anyone who hasn't spoken the first time that would like to speak? Seeing no hands, follow-up questions that I see directors have got.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure this question's already been asked, but I'm not aware of the answer. And always in terms of looking for support and funding, have you considered partnership with tourism? Obviously, your facility is a tourist draw.
Yes, we have, but we haven't approached them yet.
Oh.
All right, we'll go for round 2, but I warn everyone, I don't have a timer, but I'm sure we're well over the 10 minutes. So assuming everybody's okay to go ahead.
It's up there.
14 minutes. Okay, Director Elliott and Director Lennox.
Thank you,
Okay,
Chair.
Director Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. I think we are on round 2 because Council or Director Southcott was already his second time, so. But my question is actually more to staff, and while we have our delegate here, is there something that we as the board can do to help endorse staff time that might be needed to help guide recommendations back to us from this committee?
You.
Through the chair.
You know, so that they're good recommendations that fit things that we can endorse.
Through the chair. I think that first has to be fleshed out at the committee level.
Yeah.
And then before Mr. Finnamore comes to us, he can have a chat with us. But initially, I think that has to be fleshed out at this committee project level.
So they would need to sort out what types of support they would need from staff before we could respond to endorse that type of support, or I'm just trying to understand what you
Through the
mean.
chair, I think they have to identify what the ask is identifying what land could be offered in kind.
Okay.
And until that decision is, fleshed out at this committee level, staff I don't see any involvement in that.
Right. I guess I was thinking ahead in that once the land is decided, they're going to be coming back to 3 respective governments to try and get endorsement of their recommendations. And sometimes some staff involvement in framing those recommendations help them become more successful. And so my thought was, prior to them actually coming in with their recommendations, giving a polished recommendation that is helped out by staff. Is there anything our board can do that is required to help staff spend time on that, or is that something that you would do anyway?
The chair, I think again, it needs to be fleshed out at the committee level.
Yeah.
And once Mr. Finnamore has that information, he can contact us to fine tune or whatever it may be.
Okay, so nothing we need to do. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Patience.
Are we finished? Does anyone else have any questions? Kate, quick, Director Gisborne?
Yeah, I think based on the presentation, one of the things I think that's come up is like the desire of, say, Wellington Beach or maybe the old arena site. Now, I think what I'm hearing is if, you know, the committee comes back and goes like, hey, we actually really do want to pursue that land. That's not regional district land, that's city-owned land. But I think the regional district could do is, you know, we have conducted our service review for the recreation complex and talking about recreation services in general. And maybe as part of those discussions, we can discuss municipal property that's used for recreation, maybe currently active recreation, or maybe even we can talk to them and say like, hey, is there any property that the city has that maybe want to be, you know, partnered with the regional district because there's a joint priority here. And maybe as part of those discussions, that could be a priority that comes up. And I guess I do have one question for you. When's our next meeting?
My thinking is just get through this one.
Smart.
And so I'm probably looking at early August, I would think.
Yeah, I'm around.
See when Tanner's available because he's seldom in town.
Yeah. That's it for me.
Thank you very much for your
Thank you
presentation
very much.
and best of luck with your project.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a second delegation. So I would like to welcome Christie, who is no stranger to the regional district. Welcome. And I'm not sure who else is presenting. Is that Eric?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, all right, so it's the two of you. And you are Life Cycle Society and Eric is with Kiwanis, that's correct? You have 10 minutes for your presentation, so please go ahead.
I'd just like to introduce the rest of our delegation. This is Carol Hamilton and
Dianne
Wolyniec, Paul Turcott from Kiwanis Housing Society, Mary James from the Advocacy for Seniors Care in the Powell River and the Sunshine Coast, and Vicki Sansalone, who's with Life Cycle Housing Society. So they may answer some of your questions if I can.
Sure, and thank you for being.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for taking the time to hear us. You've all, I believe, seen the letter that Life Cycle Housing sent to you in May. I just want to add some follow-up information and then our ask. So the housing crisis is now an established rather than short-term situation in our country, right? And for low-income renters and young middle-income people who want to buy homes, it's even more serious. So 10 years ago, the province, the provincial BC, they took important steps to start addressing this problem. Local governments were required to conduct housing needs assessment. Life Cycle used to do that on the side of our volunteer table. The province established the Community Housing Fund in 2018 to build rental homes for people, including families, seniors, and people with disabilities. That's a quote from their press release. That fund was so successful that last fall, I heard the president of the BC Builders Association compliment them on it. While he was disparaging the federal government at the time for talking about their Crown Corporation for Housing, which he didn't think was going to be active for what we need. In 2022, the province created the Housing Supply Act, requiring local authorities to set housing supply targets for local communities and to identify public lands that were available for housing. And there was legislation around short-term rentals. Those were all important moves. But the actual supply of affordable housing has been lacking. Our whole region has welcomed new housing construction over the past 10 years. Local and not so local developers have invested in condos, new rental housing, single family dwellings, and the community housing program helped our society build Cranberry Place, and it is behind the Tla'amin developments in town site. And some work has occurred in other regions across the province, similar work, not other work. However, even with all this construction, things are not much better for renters. Incomes are stagnant, living costs are increasing. Many folk must spend more than 30% of their income on housing, leaving less for heating, transportation, and food. New condos are going untenanted because they are not affordable to buyers or renters. More about that later. And according to the CMHC's June rental market update, vacancies increases are concentrated. So vacancies, so new buildings get tenanted, then those tenants leave because the subsidies that the landlord was offering, free parking, no rent for the first month, those evaporate, right? So people then can't afford them. And affordability for existing tenants, this is CMHC again, has worsened across most key markets as compared to a year ago. So as the proposed federal and provincial BC purchase of unsold condos here in BC demonstrates, an oversupply of unsold homes does not create downward pressure on rents. It just stalls new construction until scarcity increases and prices increase. Prices start rising again. It seems that housing is now a financial product, not a human necessity. However, social housing built by government support and owned, operated by community-run NGOs or government itself can put pressure on the rents charged by the financial housing system. In March, your committee recommended that the board that it directs staff to report back with options for future use of municipal and regional district tax revenues. And that the board inform the Sunshine Coast Tourism, etc. Right. Our delegation asks that this staff report include consultation with local nonprofit housing providers, ourselves, Kiwanis, Talaman, and others, regarding possible uses of these tax monies, which I understood were about $100,000 a year. And we ask when staff are expected to begin their work on this report. These tax dollars could contribute to planning new developments or the retention, protection of older housing. We urge you to do something morally correct, if I can use that word, rather than market correct, with the limited funds that you have for social housing.
Thank you, Pat. Did that conclude your presentation? Great, thank you very much. I know directors will have questions and perhaps our CAO will want to respond to some of your questions, but I'll go with hands up. So Director Gisborne, you're first.
I guess the question is, I guess, fair to our staff, because the request was that we passed a motion to have a report written in consultation, and I'm wondering what is the status of that report?
Theo?
I'm sure it's still in our work plan.
Okay, on the work plan.
Director Elliott?
So just gonna reframe the question, make sure I got it right. You're asking for the RD in the development of its report, consult with local nonprofit housing providers for your input into those options.
Yes,
And I think it's an excellent idea, by the way. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. One of the questions I had about was your information around the CMHC programs. I think they weren't very, it wasn't that long ago that they came to our housing action table and did a presentation of all the CMHC stuff, or was that somebody different? And this was part of their package and now it's not? Do I have that wrong?
I wasn't at that
You weren't at
housing roundtable meeting, but I do know that CMHC for the longest time, since I've been involved in housing, 20 years plus, had programs. They would give you grant money to develop financial feasibility and do technical studies. They have ceased that funding. CMHC is no longer really doing anything. And the federal government, they have the Build Canada Housing, is pretty small. There's not a lot of hard information about what they're actually going to do. But given, my worry is that given what they're doing with BC in terms of possibly buying condos that will be sold at below market rates, doesn't look good for the affordable housing sector to me. You know, in other countries, Finland, France, they require their governments to be directly involved in housing. And it helps keep the pressure that the financial market, which is what housing is. I mean, housing REITs are buying up housing apartments and turning them into interest-bearing events for investors. They're not looking at support, providing a service and getting a fair return. They're looking at increasing their market revenue, their investment revenue. Is that an answer? I don't want to get on my soapbox.
So the CMHC program has been canceled as of when? Sorry.
Yeah, I think that they're slowly being wound down. They're kind of reached the end of their life, and this Canada Builds Homes is supposed to take its place in some ways, but it's more geared towards market housing, and it's not very clear yet. It's the same story with the BC Builds. The BC Builds program is aimed at market housing, and it's already kind of maxed out in that capacity. CMHC has kind of wound some things down without starting anything up.
Yeah, I think they were attempting to do a mix of, right?
Exactly.
Where we could have market housing and below market housing mixed together into a project that might help sustain its operation over time.
Yeah.
But of course, that is challenging.
Yeah, I think it's especially challenging for us here because we're small, right? So Kiwanis has 2 buildings. Lifecycle has 3 different properties. That works for really big portfolios where they have 20 buildings because they can spread that risk out and they can use the market to bolster the other pieces. But our societies, at least in this town, are not designed that way.
No, I understand. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Director Bender.
Thanks, Chair. It's probably more of a question for staff. I know that use of MRDT funding has some restrictions placed on it. I didn't know if anybody off the top of their head would be able to answer. Is this available for initiatives like the delegation is presented? That would require a report.
If I can take a stab, it's my understanding that yes.
Or upgrades to existing facilities?
You know, I'm not going to say for certain. I think so, but perhaps CAO has further information. But my contacts with tourism tell me I think so. So I don't want to be, put on the chopping block here. Do you have any further information?
The chair,
No. Linda Greenan's on the screen with her hand up.
Ms. Greenan.
Oh, thank you, Chair, through the chair. I'm just looking at the MRDT tax program requirements and Appendix 1.8, project goals, rationale, and details. It does ask, how does this project respond to affordable housing needs in your community? So the questions are, what is the need, issue, or demand? And then it asks, what kind of project are you spending on, such as acquiring or constructing buildings, providing funding to an existing housing project, or towards, so it does say providing funding to an existing housing project, or towards a rental or social housing program, or entering into a partnership agreement. So it looks, based on that portion of the MRDT funds, that it could potentially be used for existing projects.
Thank you so much for that. I have a quick question since I'm not seeing any further hands, and that's to our CAO. So would staff already be consulting with the non-profit housing sector as part of the report that they are working on?
the chair, no, not at this time.
All right. So, but the board could direct staff to include the nonprofit housing sector in their consultations in developing the report?
The chair, if that's your prerogative, yes.
Okay, so that's our prerogative. All right. Okay. Looking for further hands out there. I am not seeing any further hands. So I'm gonna, I guess put forward a motion that staff be directed to include the non-market or non-profit, I'm not sure which is non-market housing sector in its research for the report that has already been asked for.
MRDT report.
Yeah, the MRD, thank you, the MRDT.
Second.
The motion has been seconded. I think it's a good direction for us to make sure that the sector is included, because that's a sector that we're ultimately trying to reach. The MRDT, was created to provide housing for the hospitality industry, so that restaurants would be able to hire servers and they'd have a place to live. But the need has grown so far beyond that it's the hospitality is just kind of a small part of it, though that's how it was first initiated or imagined to be. Anyway, I think we should include them, and that's why I put the motion forward. So further discussion, Director Gisborne, then Elliott.
I think Elliott had her hand up first.
Okay, Director Elliott, then Gisborne.
Thank you, Director Gisborne and Chair. My understanding of how it came about is a little bit different than yours. And I believe that the mandate has always been housing that's impacted by removing housing out of the market to do Airbnbs and so forth, which is why that's where the MRDT is targeting, is those particular establishments, was to give back to funding for housing in general, not anything to do with tourism at all. It was just being done through the MRDT, being collected by the tourism to help the region with housing. And so that is my understanding of where it came from, because there was a lot of outcry in Airbnbs being used for tourism and removing housing stock from the community. And so I understood it to be started there. So just so, we have all the opinions on the table about that. My question, I guess, is whether we're directing staff from this level, or whether it's the committee making a recommendation to the board at the board level, or whether there is a need for us to make notice of motion for this motion, or if we're in order to have it as part of the study.
I'm going to refer to our CAO in the absence of our corporate officer. Will give us the right answer.
This notice, or not this notice, excuse me, through the chair, this motion is in order, and it just adds to our work and doesn't have to be elevated to the board.
Great, thank you.
This one.
Yeah, this motion is essentially just making our net a little bit bigger from the net that we've already cast, to use a fishing analogy. The MRDT funds, to clarify, were introduced in 1987, and they were there for local tourism marketing programs and projects. And it was in 2018 that it was expanded to include affordable housing options, so that way they weren't specifically pigeonholed. I'm in favor of this motion because one of the big questions that keeps coming up is, okay, we've got this MRDT funding. There is a demand and an ask in our community for these projects to be funded. And one of the questions I always ask is, well, what is the actual demand from all the nonprofits? Like, I think we've got, 100,000, 170,000, just trying to go off memory, which is not that great anymore. And is the ask, and the need, like, well over $1 million? I don't know. And that's where, if we have our staff reach out to these organizations and kind of find out that information, then we can find out, like, okay, is this money sufficient? Do we need to put more pressure on, say, the provincial and federal governments to, reinstate those grant programs? Because as we've all been saying, they've been drying up from the provincial and federal government, which is quite frustrating in my opinion. But the motion specifically, I'm in favor of it because it will allow us to cast a broader net share. So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Gisborne. Director Sutcliffe.
Thank you, Chair. I
And
support.
Director Fall. Go ahead.
I support this. Economic Development 101. The primary rules is support what you've got before trying to build new. And I just have to say that a program I saw that was documentary done by a UN Special Rapporteur on housing internationally. It's probably one of those heartbreaking things that I've ever seen. And it's happening right here in Canada and British Columbia. It's just brutal. I have friends living in co-op housing in Vancouver, and that's what we need. Anyway, I totally support this. We have to do what we can do so we can at least hopefully leverage more. And keep saying that, but thank you.
Thank you, Director Fall.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a question through the chair, if I might, probably most likely to our CAO, which is so the board asked for this report to look at options, which is clearly us trying to seek the range of capabilities that we might make use of the funds, different ways we might make use of that. And so that's in the work plan, and this would add to that to direct staff to also engage with local societies, which can make sense. The question I have is this going to throw any kind of wrench into that work? Is it okay to add on to that work, or would it be is this the appropriate way to make the request to engage with local NGOs in housing?
Yeah.
The chair, I think the intent is to make the report more robust. So everybody will just have to be patient. We're waiting for that report to come to fruition.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to follow up. I support the motion. I think it's fine. I just think the board needs to be aware this adds another dimension to the work, so it will take more time, I could imagine, for staff. It's not just a technical question of policies and what our range of options are. It's the engagement, which is another realm, which is appropriate, but it does expand the workload for the project. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, Director Elliott.
It's no discussion, it's question.
We're debating the motion now.
Yes, but this matters. So given that there's an election coming up, would staff be okay with doing consultation during that period of time on this report, or does this necessarily delay the entire report until after the election because of adding this in?
Yeah.
Through the chair, the election has no bearing on it. It's how it falls in place with the work plan.
Great, thank you.
Is there further discussion or debate on this motion? Seeing no hands, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimous. Thank you for your presentation.
I just, I was asked to raise something by one of our delegate members. It's just a quick statement.
Sure, go ahead.
She points out that housing for patients in the hospitals that are overcrowded is also really important, and is something that your board and perhaps this committee staff reviews. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. All right, directors, we are on to correspondence. There are 3 items. You'll note that 6.1 is already down as 7.1 under business arising. Is there any other business arising from these items of correspondence?
6.2.
Okay, the 6.2 will become 7.2. And Director Lennox.
6.3, please.
Okay, 6.3. Okay, becomes 7.3. Okay, so okay, so under business arising, you'll see a motion for 7.1. It's also very time sensitive, which is why they're recommending it be elevated to the board meeting this morning. Because the event takes place in July. So is there a mover for this recommendation? Director Brander, Director Gisborne, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, that's 7.1. 7.2, Director Gisborne.
Yeah, I'm reading the correspondence. I think it's like point number 2. He says, there's no need to spend millions of dollars and tear up our island roads and driveways. I guess the question is, are we spending money on this project? Because I think we sent like a letter of endorsement, but I don't think we have allocated funding, or did we? I can't quite remember.
Yeah.
The chair, I'm just gonna note that as a green sheet.
Okay, green sheet.
That answers your question?
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you. Was there anything else regarding this item? Seeing none, we'll move on to 7.3. Director Lennox.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just briefly, I just want the directors to, see this is an example of the community really an expression, given a dam is another way to put it, because really it just eloquently kind of summarizes how people are feeling, the knowledge that they currently have because they're engaged. And these are people that are trying to come up with solutions. So I want directors to understand as we approach other decisions on Lund Water and really that there's some practical, reasonable advice from Minister Neal in here and the BC government. And, we're going to see some correspondence about grant funding and stuff that isn't too good coming up. And so it relates to the decisions the users have, and they're just trying to be very clear. They want to live there. They don't want to create a community that's basically unaffordable for the average person. So I think it just behooves us as we discuss all these other things. Some things are in the future, but what we're going to do in the future, this is happening right now, and there's actions that have to be taken right now. And if we lose a certain grant or certain opportunities that we can't take our foot off the gas pedal to get this done. So I just thought I'd mention, we've asked the community in our advisory committee and also just in the community meetings to reach out to the ministers, to reach out to government. And this is a good example. I want to compliment people for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. On this item, Director Elaine? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. And I know that we regularly advocate to provincial governments about the struggle that Lund and other water improvement districts are in since the government made a policy of not allowing funding or grant funding to help with infrastructure water improvement districts, and only want to provide those funds to regional districts. There is still no overarching agency that has made a choice about how we are responsible for providing people water that already have water with non-conforming systems. So non-conforming systems, there's a lot of rules about how they won't approve money, they won't approve this, they won't approve that for who owns what. But there's no overarching strategy for getting water to people with conforming systems when there are so many that are non-conforming. And I think that's what this letter speaks to. It's great and fine to talk about this project and lowering costs as much as possible, but if the lowest cost alternative is still unaffordable for the residents, who takes responsibility for getting people water when they own homes that had piped in water to begin with? And if the responsible agency, which is currently the Water Improvement District, dissolves and there is no ownership of any of it, who's responsible? And what are they willing to do to make sure people continue to get water? And I think that's the overarching problem that we're all struggling with, including the people who have those homes with the water currently piped in and maybe forced to have a system that is abandoned because there is no affordable food. And I don't know the answer. I just think, and we keep advocating to provincial level governments, but what I would like to see is a province-wide attempt to get the province to answer that question. What is their vision for making sure these people get water? And I'm sorry about that. I know there's no question on the table for us here to answer at this point. I have no motion. I just feel the frustration of this situation and wanted to support the letter writer and perhaps get our collective head wrapped around how do we better advocate with all of the regions in our province that are sitting in this situation and get a unified, very simple question answered by the provincial government.
I might just take a little.
You know the
tag.
answer, yeah.
I might throw a little answer and I see Director Lennox and then Director Paul again. But that's what our motions about PMG, UBCM and ABICC
I get
have
it.
been about. So we've been trying, you know.
And what we've been doing is asking for them to fund water improvement districts, which would help in one regard, but it's not the same as asking them to take responsibility for getting people water that currently get it from non-conforming systems.
Thanks, Director Elliott. Director Lennox.
Just quickly, like totally appreciate what you're saying. The tragedy of it is there's been decades of advocacy by other directors, other boards. This board, myself, and we've met with various ministers. They've given us time. We've had special meetings. And so if you think about, we've been able to elevate it. It's like that awful known problem that everybody knows is there. And nobody's prepared to kind of commit to that long-term thing. The plan is what you said. Lund, specifically, you mentioned Lund, is actually dissolved. The water district is dissolved. There's one receiver. The board meeting is like, I decide this, I vote this, and it's done. And that's a weird system. Ultimately, the BC government is responsible. So we're working, we have workshops at Local Government Leadership Academy and at our ABICC and UBCM, to lobby on this subject, not just for Lund, for all improvement districts, not even just water, like what if your rescue improvement district or your whatever improvement district fails, you just strangle them. And so it's a tragedy built on the system, like you said, that people did. And everybody wants to get it done. For Lund, we're in the home stretch. So that's what the message is. It's a case study in many ways, some positive, some not positive, but also push it across the line so that we can work on those next improvement districts and next problem in a more organized fashion without the urgency that Lund has now. That's what it is.
Okay, thanks for your comment. Director Paul.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to express my appreciation for this letter writer. It's nice to receive letters. It's very well informed letter. This resident is very well informed, and I think represents, I would expect, and Director Lennox would know this more than me, but I expect the perspective is reflected by many of the residents covered in the area. And I just want to point out one sentence, which is, I think, at the core of what we're talking about. Residents, many of whom are seniors, retirees, and or on fixed incomes, are still going to be faced with a financing crisis just to be able to stay in the homes in which they've lived for many years. I think that's the core of what we're talking about. I mean, it's about water, but it's about affording water. I mean, if everyone could pitch in $1 million, it would be solved quickly. So it's about money to be able to fix the system and repair it. And I think it is a crisis. And I think this letter writer expresses it well. And the reason I wanted to raise it is because as we go forward, I think keeping this in mind of how we advocate and what we choose to do in terms of getting to that end point of it being a regional service will be really important.
Thanks, Director Paul. And I certainly agree that advocacy is so important. Is there anything else? This is just pulled for discussion. So we don't have a motion on the table. So I'm not seeing any further hand. So let's move on then to reports. And 8.1 is regarding the tribute policy and fee. We voted on 7.1 first, and then we considered
Sorry, excuse me, Chair.
the others is 7.2 and 3. So we've reached the end of the sevens. So that takes us to Director Paul.
Thank you, Chair. I think before making the motion, which I support the change to the policy, I'd like to make sure there's an opportunity to make consider some changes to the proposed policy, because I have one change I would like to propose. So when the Chair thinks it's appropriate, I'll make that amending motion, which isn't an amendment to the motion, the recommendation. It's an amendment to the motion. Okay, so I'll make a motion to change in the let's just go down to the policy. Okay, let's get to, so in appendix B is our policy. So to change in the policy statement, the phrase that the public is interested in the first sentence, I would like to change that to members of the public are interested. And if I get a seconder, I'll explain.
Okay, Brett, you're just one is seconding it. And Which page of the report are you?
Okay, so it's on the first page of the policy 1.11. So the policy statement with the right now, the policy statement says the Qathet Regional District respects that the public is interested in honoring persons and or community groups for various reasons and in various ways. And the amendment would change that to say the Qathet Regional District respects that members of the public are interested in honoring persons and our community groups for various reasons and in various ways. And the reason why I'm proposing this is because the whole tribute policy is structured to not really it's not really I think it's important to distinguish the difference between someone wanting to try to honor and memorialize or honor a person through a tribute bench or tribute plaque. They choose to through the policy, applying on the forum, asking for a bench, paying for it, and then they're honoring that person. That's very different than the expectation that the QRD or the community is honoring that person. And the reason I say that is because as soon as it makes it look like a tribute product is somehow the community or the regional district, well, then there may be requests from the public to say, well, we want a say, we want consultation on that, and so on. And I think that's a very different pathway, and I think that would be a different kind of policy than what we have. As I understand it, this policy, the process, when you look, in the process part of the policy, an interested person, an interested member of the public, individually chooses to apply. Our staff, our operational staff will look at that, work with that person, identify a location for the tribute product, and if it's appropriate, it'll come about. They'll pay the fee, which is what the policy is about, and it doesn't even come to the board. It's actually a process of an operational issue, and it's not suggesting that the board or the public is somehow asking this, and it's just to avoid any problems. I think it's making it clear people want to choose to memorialize, and we're allowing that, and we're enabling that. We're not opening this. This isn't meant to be a big discussion of QRD bestowing honors and memorials, because I think that gets into challenges of what we're saying with these tributes.
Okay, thank you, Director Fall. So it's the changing of the wording that members of the public are interested in honoring. Have I got that right?
Yeah. So do you see the policy statement, the very first section of the policy?
First line, yeah.
And it said, so to change that first sentence to say the Qathet Regional District respects that members of the public are interested in honoring persons. And that's to make it consistent with the fact that the process is about members of the public filling out a form and engaging with staff and doing it. It's not about the public at large, which I think if we wanted it to be, that would be an alternative. And I'm not suggesting we do want that. An alternative would be that the whole process becomes a public process, which might, lead to requests for public engagement, which then would increase the costs, and be talking about a different fee structure. So then we'd be, it'd be changing the whole nature of it. So this is just making it consistent with the rest of the policy.
Okay, thanks, Director Fall. Debate on the motion, Director Elliott.
So the motion is to change that wording, or the motion is
In the first line of the policy statement.
there's not the one in the package over. I like the motion. I concur with Director Fall. I think it's a really great idea to really distinguish between enabling individuals to provide tributaries on our lands and managed through us versus a policy that we decide who is worthy of tributaries and have a public process. But it begs the question now, if there was somebody being posed for a tributary pledge and somebody willing to pay for it, and it was, for whatever reason, a publicly unacceptable figure, do we have a process for vetting that at all? And so this appears to be without that process. And I don't know that that's appropriate for us to do or not do, but I'm still asking the question. If for example, when somebody wanted to pay tribute to somebody that had hurt a lot of people within the local area or whatever, is there a process for vetting whether a person is appropriately is appropriate to a tribute bench on URD property?
So let's try to get that answer, and I see our manager of operational services is with us, Mr. Devereaux. Do you have an answer for that question or some insight to share?
Through the chair, if I may. First of all, I want to thank Director Fall for bringing that forward. I think that's a great amendment. It actually clarifies who exactly is coming forward. And makes it, and it doesn't put operational services staff in a position where operational requirements are compromised or stuff. We can help us make those decisions because it's always been a bit of an issue sometimes, you know. I want this bench right on the waterfront, right? When that affects, you know, maybe thousands of users who enjoy the view at that waterfront and don't want to look at a bench sitting there blocking that view or whatever the case is. And as for Director Elliott's question, that is not something we've ever run across. 100% of these tributes have been normally when someone passes and the family asks to have something memorial. I've never seen it politicalized or anything inappropriate. If that happened, staff would flag that and would come to the board in camera to speak to that issue. I don't think there'd be any other way to do any other way to arrange that or put it into policy. I mean, I think it's a very broad statement there. So
thank you, our CAO as a comment.
Through the chair, I think it's spelled out pretty well in the policy in what a tribute product means. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different types of tribute products that can be asked for. And they don't have a great wide range of variations within each one. So I don't think that any one of them could, unless you came up with a creative looking type bench, I don't think anything could be, what's the word I'm looking for? Community inappropriate. Because it says letters engraved. Letters engraved. It doesn't say anything about pictures. So if somebody wants to get a picture engraved, it's out.
Okay, does that answer your question?
My question is answered.
Okay, thank you. And thanks, Mr. Devereaux. Director Lennox?
Thanks. I support the amendment. It's good to be clear. I agree with both the mover and Mr. Devereaux. My question is, who gets to decide what's inappropriate and who's inappropriate and who should be on a bench and who shouldn't?
That was my question.
No, but I'm like, seriously, are we getting into trying to decide that? And like,
Well,
no.
if I can take your cross at it, because I understood Mr. Devereaux correctly, they never had an
Yeah,
issue
I know.
with that. And you know,
I heard the question, so I'm like, really? Like,
I think there's always a chance it could happen, because what if your best friend is your best friend, you want to put a memorial, but
I think the bench
someone else
is
has
missing
it.
chair.
So, it's a chance of that. Director Gisborne?
Yeah, I think if that situation ever comes up, like, someone wants to be honored, and the family puts them on there and people go like, hey, this person was, something happened. Hearing from Mr. Devereaux, if we do receive complaints, and by we, I mean our organization, our staff receive complaints, they would bring it to the board in an in-camera meeting and the board would provide direction. I don't think the right move is for our staff to be making those calls on like, okay, who should have their name on the bench. It's essentially, the default is if people pay their money, they put in the application form, they have the initials engraved, it gets put up. If someone complains, it comes back to us in an in-camera meeting and then it's up to the board to provide direction. But hopefully that situation never happens in the future, because as we heard from Mr. Devereaux, it hasn't happened in the past, so.
And that's what I heard.
Yeah, most people are really good about that. And I also agree with Director Lennox. If there's something really objectionable, the bench might just go missing.
Yeah.
Through the chair, great questions, and we don't expect directors to get right into the minutia. That's why General Manager of Operations is there. In policy point 2, it says the regional district has the right of final approval of the location of any tribute product, but will work with the donator. So that's where we've got it covered.
Okay, is there anything further on the recommendation on the table, which is Director Paul?
Just briefly, that was my proposed, the motion I put forward is exactly to address this question, which is we shouldn't be and staff shouldn't be. And if it ever did come up, I mean, because there's more likely to be in the gray area. And if someone said, hey, you know, I don't think that person should be honored, why did the regional district honor? Then it makes it clear we aren't the ones doing the honoring. Staff isn't the one doing the honoring. The community, why wasn't the community asked? Well, the community wasn't doing the honoring. The person who made the request did the honoring. So they have an opportunity. We're enabling them to honor someone and memorialize or remember a group or person because they so choose. And we're more working with them to allow that to happen. We're not making a decision on that because it makes me shudder to imagine it you know, landing on our table to talk about a person or something about, you know, so I think it's better. This is just making it clear. No, that's the person. We are allowing people to honor their loved ones.
Thank you. And we could wrap up debate. I'm seeing our assistant corporate officer. Yeah, Ms. Coleman.
Clarification, thank you, Chair. Did we have a seconder for that?
Yes, it was correct.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay, so I'm going to call for the question on this motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimous. Now, to the agenda. Yes, Director Fall.
Chair, I have one more small one, which I'll just put forward. I think it should be quick, and we'll see if Mr. Devereaux has any comment on it. But it's in the responsibility authority to act section. So I would like to move that the word particular be added before tribute product right at the end of the sentence. And if I get a second, I'll explain more.
There is best suited to a particular product.
I think I think it may be nitpicky, but I think it's a grammatical thing, the way it's been replaced. If it doesn't get seconded, that's fine. But if it does, I'll explain.
Okay.
Chair, if I may. So it's just before it was, you know, the product, the staff, i.e. whether a particular product is best suited to a particular tribute product. Before it was a listing whether it was this, or this. So maybe I can ask through the chair to our manager of operational services that if that was the intent, if the word particular helps make it a little bit more easier to read.
Mr. Devereaux?
Yes, to the chair. Agreed.
Okay, thank you. And otherwise, I'm totally happy with the rest of it. This will be my last suggestion.
Thank you. Further discussion on this item? Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimous. Okay, directors, we still have
This question for clarification. Were those amendments and now we're on the main motion?
we've not made a main
Now we
motion.
did the main motion.
Those were separate motions proposed on the same topic by Director Fall. So I'd like to focus on the motions in our package on the agenda. And you will see that there is two motions. So there's the first paragraph and then the second two paragraphs. Director Elliott.
So I'd like to make the motion as all three together, and the first section, of course, would say the recommend to the board that the board approve the updated policy 1.11 tribute policy as amended.
Okay.
Just that, and then the rest of it as it.
Okay, thanks to you.
Through the chair, it is situated as a one full motion. And I think paragraph 2 satisfies what you're asking.
Well, that's specific to the fees.
Oh, sorry. Yes,
Yeah,
you're correct.
no.
Yeah, that's
So we have amended this particular one, and so that's why I've added amended to section 1, so that we're clear that those amendments we just made are part of what we're approving.
Okay, so the motion on the table includes the word as amended and the word "and," so that it's all considered as one. So that's what is on the table. For the
Seconded.
discussion. Director Fall.
I seconded it.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. We're on to 8.2, delegation of authority, and there is a recommendation in our package. Director Brander?
Move the recommendation.
The recommendation has been moved. Director Fall second. Discussion? Seeing no hands, all in favor?
Quickly, Chair.
Oh, okay, almost.
I think I understand the report, but to me, this is a good example of, I think the directors are protected better this way by not having that ultimate authority. Is that a correct statement, through the chair?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Ms. Greenan.
Ms. Greenan?
Thank you, Chair, through the chair. Yes, it's just administration of our Revenue Canada accounts. There's not a real risk with having authority on there, but it does make it more burdensome to make changes to staff when their roles change, etc. So this will just streamline our administration of the Canada Revenue Agency accounts.
Further discussion on the motion? Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. So now we are 8.3, yes. The emergency operations overtime allowance for exempt staff. Director Brander.
Move it.
Move it. Seconded by Director Southcott. Discussion? Seeing no hands? Okay, go ahead. We almost got it. Director Elliott.
And I apologize if I haven't read everything I should have in the report on this particular one, but my question is very simple. Oftentimes exempt staff do not get overtime because they manage their schedules in a flexible way because that's what's needed. This is specific to overtime for a particular emergency. Is that correct? That couldn't be predicted at all. That's my question.
Okay, Mr. Toms, I see you there.
Yes, through the chair. I heard the question and the answer is yes, that's correct. This is specific to emergency operations.
Okay, great. Director Gisman.
Yeah, I'm in support of this motion on this change to the policy, and it's summarized in the conclusion perfectly. The current policy is not compliant with the province's 2026 financial assistance standards, thereby potentially exposing the QRD to being deemed ineligible for provincial reimbursement of exempt staff overtime during otherwise eligible events. So if we don't update the policy and there's an event that goes on, our local taxpayers may be on the hook when, if we change the policy, then it's the provincial government that'll be covering some of those costs. So with that, thinking about the bottom line, I'm in support of the policy change. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Gisman. Director Lennox, and then I'll put myself on.
Yeah, just a quick follow. I appreciate exactly that, and it is clear in the conclusion. Just again around my understanding of exempt staff and overtime policy. In this case, I think the intent is to pay out staff and not have time in lieu. That's my first question, just to be 100% clear.
Mr. Toms, is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct, especially because if the QRD is going to ask the province to reimburse, they cannot reimburse time in lieu.
Thank you. Okay, so that confirms what I read. And then just a quick question, our normal overtime policy, do staff have the option of overtime payout or time in lieu?
Yeah.
The chair, exempt staff have time in lieu.
Okay.
Up to a certain point, which is 80 hours.
Okay.
Once they hit 80 hours of bank blue time, then it is paid out immediately for every hour after 80.
Okay.
But up until then, they can take away, use, and to take away.
Thanks. Quick follow up. Is that 80 hours per annum, like per year? And can you bank up to a certain, 80, and then
through the chair, 80 is a continuous number.
Okay, thank you.
So once you hit 80,
Can take
you
it
hit the
to
point. And so 75, 90%.
Use it or get paid. Yeah,
Uses it up in time off.
okay, thank you for that.
Okay, thanks. And I had a quick question, I suppose, to Mr. Tom. Now, different exempt staff would be paid a different rate. You're paid your salary, and exempt staff, someone else would be paid something different. Is the money we get back from the government reflective of your actual salary, or is it just kind of a number arbitrarily that they choose to use?
The lowest, yeah.
Chair, to answer that, in our experience, we would submit exactly our overtime costs, and the financial guidelines indicate that they would expect our costs to be reasonable.
That's my question. Anything? Further, seeing no hands, we can vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. So there is no new business. Question period. Any questions for the committee?
Hello, Chair Galinsky from the Peak here.
Welcome.
Thank you. With regard to item 4.2, which was the MRDT, I'm wondering how much funding is the QRD entitled to under the MRDT?
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah. Can we get back to you on that, Paul?
Absolutely can, yeah. An email from the General Manager of Financial Administration would be more than adequate.
Okay, I did see her on the screen for a moment. Do you have an answer, Ms. Green?
Thank you, Chair, through the chair. The amount, it varies depending on how much is collected, but in the past, we've gotten about, $105,000 is what we're kind of expecting annually, but it could vary. It could be, a little bit more or less than that.
Through the chair, you stalled MRDT, I think, in this fiscal year. Is that correct?
That's correct. The board put it on hold at the April 7th meeting.
But through the chair, that money is still available if the board takes it off the table. Is that a correct understanding?
Green?
Through the chair, that money right now rests with Sunshine Coast Tourism.
I thank the manager for the response. Those are my questions, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wolyniec. If there is no further questions, we have a motion to go in camera. Would someone like to move that? Director Gisborne, seconded by Director Lennox. All in favor? Any opposed? We are going in camera. we're just gonna close this
As
down.
soon as we close out.
We shouldn't have to do that. There's no rise in reporting.
Recording in progress.
Welcome back to Committee of the Whole. We have no rise in report. Our meeting is adjourned. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.